unregulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Welcome to another edition of Bearing Arms, Cam and Company. My name is Cam Edwards, and today we're going to be talking about those Illinois lawmakers who are doing all kinds of infringing on the right to keep and bear arms. The Illinois House concurring with changes to a sweeping ban on firearms and magazines on Tuesday afternoon. Governor J.B. Pritzker signing that legislation into law on Tuesday evening. And the law goes into effect immediately. So as of today, it is prohibited for gun stores to sell AR-15s and all other designated, quote-unquote, assault weapons, as well as, and this gets confusing because apparently there is no standard definition of a large capacity magazine in Illinois. That invented phrase means whatever anti-gun lawmakers want it to mean. So in Illinois, a large capacity magazine for a rifle is now 10 rounds. A large capacity magazine for a handgun is anything that, well, I should say large capacity magazine for a magazine is anything over 10 rounds. Large capacity for a handgun is anything over 15 rounds. What's the difference between the two? I bet even lawmakers who voted for this couldn't tell you why the designation is the way it is, but I'll tell you what I think. Both are unconstitutional. But we're not just going to talk about this, you and me today. No. Dan Eldridge is going to be with us here in just a moment, the owner of Maxon Shooter Supplies in Plain, Illinois, and one of the many FFLs in Illinois who has been outspoken from the get-go about the attempt to ban commonly owned firearms and magazines and the legal challenge that is soon to come. So without any further ado, let's get right to our conversation with Dan Eldridge. Take a look and a listen. Well, Dan, first of all, thanks for coming on the show. I wish it were under better circumstances, quite honestly.
My pleasure, Cam. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. All right, so let's get right to it. We've been talking about House Bill 5855. That's not actually what passed. Because Democrats did a lot of sleight of hand here in order to get this gun and magazine ban through during the lame duck session, right? I mean, they had to pull existing legislation, swap it out because there are all kinds of rules about having to read bills 3 days in a row. So they did a lot of legislative tricks to rush this thing into place.
Yeah, it's said that seeing legislation drafted is like seeing sausage made, and Illinois is living up to that standard quite nicely. Right now, what we have is a legislature and a governor gleefully acting in defiance of the United States Supreme Court on a civil rights issue. Well, congratulations, Illinois. I think if you squint hard enough, you can just make out Governor Orville Falva standing on the schoolhouse steps in Little Rock, can't you?
It is. You are not the first person to invoke the specter of massive resistance, and frankly, I think rightfully so. I live in Virginia. I live not far, actually, from Prince Edward County, Virginia, where in the wake of Brown versus Board of Education in the 1950s, they shut down the public schools for 5 years rather than integrate. Right. I've spoken with people who were taught in church basements, who were taught in living rooms because they were told you can't go to school with these little white kids, right? Yep. And we are seeing the difference here is that back in the 50s, this was about depriving a specific group of people, right? Black Americans, of every civil right possible. Now this is about depriving every law-abiding citizen of one civil right, their right to keep and bear arms. Now, maybe today's Democrats say that makes it better. I don't think so, quite honestly, particularly when the implications and the enforcement of these new laws are frankly likely to fall disproportionately on minorities, lower income Illinois residents, and Chicago residents.
Correct. When he signed the bill last night, the governor said that, and I'm quoting here, there was a lot of thought that went into it to make sure it would be, and obviously constitutional, and obviously it'll go to the courts and they'll make their determinations. Well, there was no consideration of whether this is constitutional or not. As president of the Dealers Association, I am always in contact with leadership on both sides of the House when stuff like this comes up. We elected not to give subject matter testimony at all. We're not going to teach them how to build a better mousetrap in this case. But what we did do is we said, you can't do this, and here's why. And we laid out the Bruin case, the 3 GVR cases that came out of that. and it's simply unambiguous. Yesterday, the Senate president claimed in testimony, or I guess this was 2 days ago when they sent it back, that the Supreme Court thinking on 2A issues is in flux. Really? Well, that doesn't comport with the reality of Bruin and those 3 GVR cases. And then even this week, we got that TRO in New Jersey on the kill carry bill, all decided on the basis on a basis that this law violates.
Right, and we'll talk about the legal arguments against the gun and magazine ban here in a second, but I want to go back to before the bill passed, because I got an email from you a couple of days ago that I thought was pretty remarkable. You talked about, compared to a year ago, handgun sales were double in your store. Sales of modern sporting rifles were up almost 1,000%, almost 10 times higher. So if you can, talk to me about Illinois gun owners and frankly, maybe even new gun owners reacting and responding to this anti-gun legislation with their wallets and with their pocketbooks.
Right. That's exactly what it is. They're voting with their wallets. They don't trust this government. There's compliance with registration schemes, which this has a component of, is very, very low where it's been tried. And I don't think that we sold these hundreds and hundreds of long guns to people who anticipate turning them in or destroying them or moving them out of state. So, this is a very seasonal business, right? You know that. So I just looked at that Thursday through Sunday period, the first Thursday through Sunday in January, this year versus last year. And handguns were up double. Long guns were up 10 times. And then that doesn't even count the ammo, the accessories, the mags, all the doodads that you put on your rifle, like Mr. Potato Head.
Right. Well, you say that was the first Thursday through Sunday of the year. What were things like at Maxon's Monday and Tuesday of this week? Same.
Yeah. It's just been nonstop. What we were urging people all along to do was buy what's in the store. Don't order online. Don't order from one of the online vendors and have it transferred to us, because if this thing is passed, we won't be able to get you your gun. Illinois has a 72-hour wait. If we don't have the gun physically in hand, we can't begin the 4473 and start the background check. So there will be a fair number of those guns that'll have to go back, and that's unfortunate, or that we will keep pending injunctive relief, which I think will come very quickly, and then we'll be able to deliver people their property.
Okay, but yeah, so there are some folks who are just stuck in limbo, right? They started the process of buying a gun, but it wasn't completed, and now they for the time being anyway, they can't get a hold of that firearm. Now, again, you talked about injunctive relief, and so let's talk about this, because I know that the Firearms Dealers Association in Illinois, you all will be filing suit.
Correct. The association is Federal Firearms Licensees of Illinois. That's FFLIL.org is the website. It's a 501c4. We're working in conjunction with the Aurora Sportsman's Club, which is the largest gun club in Illinois, Guns Save Life, which is an advocacy group in Southern Illinois. We have a number of the manufacturers, distributors, and of course dealers supporting us as members, and just general public donors. So the response has been tremendous.
That is fantastic to hear. Is it fair to say that you expect litigation to be filed imminently?
Yes, in federal court. There's another group that's filing in state court on the procedural stuff, and that's great. We'll simply flood the zone here, and we will win, and we will win quickly, and we will have a substantial war chest to go after all sorts of other things. I believe, Cam, that this is a high water mark for gun control advocates in Illinois. I really, truly believe that in my heart of hearts.
I think so. And I think it's a matter of overreach, too. I think this probably is the high watermark. I think this probably is as far as they get. And if you look at, the history of Illinois gun control over the past 20 years, Dan, I mean, honestly, it's been a history of losing in court, right? When it came to concealed carry, the state of Illinois argued you don't have a right to bear arms in self-defense. Right. And the Seventh Circuit said, yeah, you do. Rather than appeal that case up to the Supreme Court, take the nationwide loss, they said, all right, fine. And they ended up adopting a shall issue concealed carry law. We've had 2 judges at the circuit court level and state court declare the FOID card to be unconstitutional. And the state Supreme Court has found a way to invalidate those decisions without actually ruling on the merits of the case. You're right. I think the gun control lobby is fighting a losing battle in Illinois. But what makes you so confident that they're going to lose this particular case?
Well, the venue that we're choosing, we're going into federal court. They even if we were to file in the Northern District, we would probably win. They don't have the court precedent on their side of this. I mean, it's unambiguous. You just don't get to do this anymore. The Second Amendment is an individual right that cannot be infringed, and the standards here is strict scrutiny. Nobody can find historical analogs for any of this stuff back at between 1790 and 18 whatever you want to pick. There just is none, and that's the basis that the New Jersey groups won on this week, was the lack of the unlikelihood that the defendants would be able to find a historical analog.
Yeah, and that's true. I mean, you really can't. Not in 1791. These types of bans on certain firearms, they didn't exist. And I think, the 14th Amendment period is actually really interesting, too, because at that point you had seen the development of firearms. Right. So now we're not talking about single shot Derringers. Now we're not talking about muskets that take, maybe all close to a minute to reload. Now you've got revolvers. Now you have repeating rifles. You've got, the Henry magazine or the Henry Rifle Company bragging about, load on Sunday, shoot all week. And yet there was no 19th century equivalent of moms demanding bans on lever action, right? That you just didn't see that. These are modern artifacts of the modern gun control movement. And I agree with you. I think it's going to be very difficult for the defenders of this ban to find anything that remotely resembles what they're trying to do here in our nation's history. Right.
And it's said that history doesn't repeat, but it echoes, and people really don't change much over time. And I think that a good analog to the current gun control crowd would be the advocates for prohibition, the Temperance League types, whose subject matter expertise was how emotionally strongly they felt about a particular issue. They're completely uninformed on gun rights. They're completely uninformed on gun owners and the lawful ownership of guns. Here's an example. The bill spends how long with this weird fixation on 50 caliber rifles and ammo? Okay, we're talking about a 30-pound rifle that consumes $5 a round ammo. Cam, how often are 50 caliber rifles used in crimes?
Almost never.
Right. So we're going to fixate on this, even calling out that the ammunition itself is banned. Possession, sale is banned. These people watch too many movies. They are rightfully outraged by the deranged acts of a depraved individual. Nobody thinks that was good, but their emotional response to this is to lash out at the 2.5 million law-abiding gun owners in Illinois, and we're done. We're done trying to convince. We're done trying to reason. We're just saying you can't do this, and we will see you in court, and we'll win.
And I feel as confident as you, Dan, that is going to be the outcome here. But I got to ask, so what is life like for the employees at Maxon Shooter Supplies today? I mean, not only do you all have to figure out, okay, has this gun been banned by name? Has this gun been banned by feature? I mean, how do you comply with the law and still continue to do business?
Well, we're working through that right now, and the association is going to put out to the membership what we think best practices are. We have this window where we can continue to complete transactions for firearms that the background check was started before midnight last night or this morning. My concern is that there's probably a lot of shops that don't understand the nuance of this, that may not even know about this. We have customers coming in that are baffled by this assault weapon ban. Not everybody is as focused on gun rights as you and I are, and I'm concerned that there are people that are going to get caught up in a trick bag here, completing transactions that they really shouldn't. And in an environment where the ATF is on a warpath for paperwork errors, boy, that could be fatal.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It absolutely could. You're right. Now, speaking of enforcement, Illinois is kind of the birthplace of the Second Amendment sanctuary movement, going back to Effingham County and 2017. Have you heard from any sheriffs or state's attorneys, let's say outside of the Chicagoland area, who've said, I have no plans on enforcing these measures?
Yes. there are at least 4 counties, and I believe it's quite a few more. It started with Iroquois County this go around, where the county board of supervisors adopted a resolution that no county funds would be expended in support of this sort of gun control. So, Illinois is a tale of 2 populations, right? You have the urban Cook County, Chicagoland, and Collier counties, and then you have the rest of Illinois. Unfortunately, the Senate is apportioned by population now, thanks to the Warren Supreme Court. So this whole idea that we have a bicameral legislature is nonsense. We just have a big representative house and a small representative house. And so the Cook County, Chicagoland is going to dominate. And, that is what it is. The rest of these counties, though, at the county level are saying, we're just not going to go along with this.
Well, I tell you, it's going to be an interesting couple of days here as we wait for the lawsuits to be filed, the first hearings to be held. But Dan, what is your advice for Illinois gun owners or those who would like to become Illinois gun owners in the near future? What's your advice to them today?
Well, first, support our efforts, right? I have to put the plug in. It's fflil.org. We are a 501c4, so it's not a charitable tax-deductible donation, but the board, which is 4 of us, we absorb all the overhead of that so that all the other resources can be devoted to this litigation. This is going to be a very expensive fight. I don't expect that we'll get to the Supreme Court because we have all these cases ahead of us that may not even get there. They may get decided. But even if they do get to the Supreme Court, I don't think we'll have to go there. But we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars of litigation costs to get this thing in. Support your local gun dealer. That's what really matters. Keep the faith. We're going to win this thing. If you have a firearm that can't be delivered to you, sit tight for a week. Sit tight for 2 weeks. We'll probably be able to get you your gun.
Okay. Dan, listen, I really appreciate you joining us on the program today. I know we're going to be talking again very soon, but thank you for all your efforts in fighting for and defending our right to keep and bear arms here in Illinois. I know it feels like an uphill fight, but I'm glad to hear your confidence and your optimism and frankly, your enthusiasm today, because I know that there probably are going to be a lot of gun owners in Illinois who are rightfully pissed off, rightfully angry, but resolution and justice is coming.
Thank you, Cam, and thanks for letting us tell our story.
Absolutely. Dan Eldridge joined us from Maxon Shooter Supplies and FFLIL here on Bearing Arms Cam & Company. I appreciate Dan joining us on the program. And listen, we're going to be following what's going on in Illinois at bearingarms.com and here on the show. So make sure you check out the website because we'll be updating you on all of the lawsuits, the temporary restraining order requests, and the backlash to the gun ban that I think we're going to see on the part of county sheriffs and individual gun owners as well. Now, let's turn our attention to today's Armed Citizen story, our good deed of the day and our recidivist report. We'll start there with the story out of Oregon, where, again, the Democrats in charge of the state have decided that, crime has skyrocketed. What are we going to do? Let's go after the legal gun owners. That'll work, right? Yeah, even while they have passed laws that ostensibly are designed to reform the criminal justice system, but seem to be giving youthful offenders in particular a lot of lucky breaks. And now a woman who was allegedly shot by a teen on parole has sued the Oregon Youth Authority, claiming negligence, basically that they were not supervising the teens under their care. 22-year-old Amaretta Rice alleges that the Oregon Youth Authority and 3 of its employees granted Gerardo Trujillo Torres parole in July of 2020, despite a record of violent and disruptive conduct while he was in and out of custody. The following year, Rice was critically wounded while in the passenger seat of a car. A man in the driver's seat was killed in the shooting, and Trujillo Torres, who's 16 at the time, was the first juvenile charged after Oregon made significant changes to how it prosecutes juveniles accused of violent crimes. Rice's lawsuit filed this week in Marion County Circuit Court also names a juvenile probation and parole officer, a supervisor with the Oregon Youth Authority, as well as the superintendent of the McLaren Youth Correctional Facility, which is a facility for male juvenile offenders. The current criminal case against Trujillo Torres is pending in Marion County Court in addition to second-degree murder. He also faces attempted murder and assault charges for shooting Rice. She, again, alleges that the state and these 3 employees were negligent when they did not consider the threat that he posed to others if he was paroled. And she says they did almost nothing after they learned that the teenager had violated parole conditions. alleging that the probation officer in question refused to act for more than a month after she learned that Trujillo Torres had shot at strangers from a moving car in Kaiser, Oregon. Also alleges that probation officer, who served as the teen's parole officer, was aware that Trujillo Torres was not in school, nor was he working in the fall of 2020. But again, nothing was done despite those repeated parole violations. Now, I'll be honest with you. I think that Rice has a good argument, but I don't know if she has much of a legal case because, quite frankly, I think this is the rule, not the exception. And if, every victim of crime who was injured because the state ignored its own rules regarding probation or parole, well, the courts would be clogged with similar lawsuits. So I wish her the best. I don't know what the odds of her success might be. But again, as Oregon is facing a massive increase in violent crime, their answer was not to repeal these laws that are going soft on violent criminals. Their answer was not to ensure transparency and accountability within the state-run institutions that are supposed to provide rehabilitation or incarceration, at the very least, for those who've been convicted of violent crimes. Nope. Instead, they went after legal gun owners, right? Trying to make it as hard as possible for them to become legal gun owners in the first place with their permit to purchase standards, the training mandates, waiting periods. They've got their own magazine banning it. All of these aimed at people who are trying to obey the law. Meanwhile, those in Oregon who are trying to flagrantly violate the law keep getting a slap on the wrist. And Democrats keep scratching their heads as to why crime keeps getting worse. Let's see. Today's armed citizen story, Des Moines, Iowa, where a armed mom and a security guard stopped an attempted child abduction in one of the skywalks in Des Moines. Will Hunter is a security guard there. He says, everyone's welcome to be here. It's a public space, and I respect that. But, in the wintertime, Hunter says they will get members of the homeless community. He says you have a lot of mental illness in the homeless community, and they end up sheltering inside the skywalks where it's warm. WHO Channel 13 reports that last week, 2 people were walking repeatedly in front of the Hubble Tower Apartments door. One of the managers, named Shay Lindbergh, finally opened the door. Her kid was by her side, and she asked, listen, is there a problem? One of the people then grabbed her child. Yeah. And there was a bit of a tug of war for the child, but thankfully Lindbergh was armed and had her firearm with her. And according to police, once she drew her firearm and said, let go of my kid, that's when the man and woman walked off, and Lindbergh called the local security guard. Sergeant Paul Parizek with the Des Moines Police Department says, quote, it certainly looks like the big turning point here. The pivotal piece to keeping her child safe was the fact that she was lawfully armed with a handgun, and she produced it and told them, let go of my kid. How about that? After she called the security guard for the skywalk, Will Hunter called police, gave him some names, and then also followed the man and woman until police could take over. Don't know, by the way, what charges these folks are facing. Or even their names, but, there might not always be a security guard around or a police officer willing to step in. Thankfully, in this case, the mom in question was able to protect not only herself, but her young child from a couple of people who apparently had some plans for the youngster. Glad that those plans were thwarted. Glad that the mom and child are safe and sound. Again, because she was prepared and able to protect herself and her family. Finally today, our good deed of the day, in the right place at the right time, willing and able to do the right thing. A sheriff's sergeant and a good Samaritan in Paulding County, Georgia, who ran across a woman who had stalled out in the middle of a busy highway. The Sheriff's Department posting on Facebook, Sergeant Jared Gunter came across Ms. Cassandra Dunn this morning, stalled out in the middle of Highway 278 near Highway 61. After some citizens stopped to help push her car, she was safely moved to a turning lane where Blake Abney then volunteered to tow her vehicle to a nearby gas station so she could get back on her way. The sheriff's office went on to say, thanks to great teamwork, Ms. Dunn safely moved from one of the busiest roadways in Paulding County to the fuel pumps where she could get back on her way. Before departing, Ms. Dunn shared hugs and tears with both men. Just a reminder, it's free to be kind to your neighbor and fellow citizen. So there you go. Sergeant Jared Gunter and Good Samaritan Blake Abney in the right place at the right time, willing able to do the right thing to help Cassandra Dunn get on her way. And we thank you both for your very good deed. Now, that is all the time we've got for you on this edition of Bearing Arms Cam and Company. Coming up on tomorrow's program, we're going to be talking about the Fifth Circuit's decision to overturn the bump stock ban imposed by the Trump administration. Michael Cargill, who is the named plaintiff in the case in the Fifth Circuit, is going to be with us talking about the potential for what happens next and why he decided to challenge that ban in the first place. As I said, we've got a lot of stuff happening today in the courts in Illinois and elsewhere, so I would encourage you to check out bearingarms.com throughout the day. Make sure that you are caught up on the latest news impacting your right to keep and bear arms. If you like what you see, I'd also encourage you to become a VIP member at Bearing Arms. Not only will you get exclusive news stories and analysis you won't find anywhere else, you're going to get that warm, fuzzy feeling of knowing that you're supporting the independent pro-segment journalism that we do. I mean, the warm, fuzzy feeling is nice, but the exclusive content's a pretty good deal, too. Just use the promo code GUNRIGHTS. You can get a significant savings if you go to bearingarms.com/subscribe. Until tomorrow, be well, be safe, and be free.